Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. Even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Georgia, in Kansas, in Texas, Missouri, on Chicago, Illinois, Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, Africa, Kenya, Pakistan, Zambia, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 5 on the subject, the opening of the seventh seal. And hoping that God would help us in studying this wonderful prophecy. I would like to read track number 5. So here on track number 5 on page 117 and 118. It says, "Can there be anyone who has ascended the present heights of divine revelation, commanding full perspective on the conflict of the ages as it comes in review before the judgment throne, and yet has not realized that upon his gladly complying with the message of the hour hangs his eternal destiny. If there be such a one unpersuaded by this final warning, then neither will he be persuaded, though one rose from the dead." Luke 16 verse 31. "He shall experience tragedy indescribable. His name shall be blotted from the books. His life shall be in forfeit to the destroyers. His soul shall faint with weeping and gnashing of teeth." Matthew 8 verse 12. "He shall perish from the earth, lost forever. He, though, who is persuaded and who walks in the light will experience joy inexpressible. He will receive the mark, the seal of God's approval. His sins will be blotted out. His name will be ineffaceably written in the Lamb's Book of Life. He will witness Michael standing up and delivering him from the time of trouble, such as never was. Daniel 12 verse 1. He will return midst the ransom of the Lord and come to Zion with songs and everlasting joy upon his head. He shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. Isaiah 35, verse 10. He will inherit the earth, saved eternally. So, that is a wonderful statement. And hoping that we will be among those who will have their names forever retained in the Lamb's Book of Life. I would like to read 2 TG 36 on page 8. It says, soon, brother, sister, we are to enter into this period of persecution. 2 TG. page 8. Soon, brother, sister, we are to enter into this period of persecution. And how thankful we should be that there is no need to fear, no need to be taken off guard. For with the light now shining on our pathway, we should know what to expect and how to cope with the situation. Truly unto the upright there ariseth light in the darkness. Psalms 112. Verse 4. So, let us study closely. Brothers and sisters, that we could be able to grasp that promise given in Revelation 1 verse 1, saying, I will show thee, Revelation 1 on verse 1, the revelation of Jesus Christ which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. By which the voice cometh from heaven, saying, in Revelation 4 verse 1, I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And that is pointing to the last generation of men, to the last church. Such promise will be bestowed by God unto them. By which the perfect fulfillment must be in the judgment that pertains to the living. The particular object in view, as stated in tract number 5, page 32. The statements which must shortly come to pass. Revelation 1 verse 1, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. Go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view of showing the things lying not behind but ahead of John's time, with reference being made only incidentally to the past, in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. And we would like to prove to you that that statement is more definitely applied to the last and the final Day of Atonement. What will happen from that time onwards? Now, I would like to read again the statement in 2TG number 12 on page 29. 2TG number 12, page 29. The only difference you see is that Daniel was shown the judgment being set up, whereas John saw it in full session. What judgment by which the only portion that had been shown by God to Daniel is the preparations. Here the statement says, the only difference you see is that Daniel was shown the judgment being set up. Is perfectly corroborating to the statement in track 15. On page 13, saying, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene. Whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. This statement is directly addressed to the judgment that pertains to the living. Because the book of Daniel is directly addressed to the judgment that pertains to the dead. Now, I would like to read track number 3. On page 49. Track number 3, page 49. This work of separation or cleansing brought to view in the parable of Matthew 13 verse 30 And again, in that of Matthew 13, verse 47 to 49. Also in the prophecy of Malachi 3, verse 1 to 3. And in that of Ezekiel chapter 9. As well as in Revelation 14, is directly applicable to the judgment day for the living. But the cleansing of the sanctuary at the end of the 2,300 days, according to Daniel 8 verse 14 and Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, applies directly to the judgment among the dead. So the shepherd's rod is very plain that the book of Daniel is directly addressed to the judgment that pertains to the dead. Although the book of Daniel is also applied to the judgment that pertains to the living, but only indirectly. The same with the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is applied to the dead only indirectly. But the direct application of the book of Revelation is the judgment that pertains to the living. Or the term used by inspiration in track number 5, page 32. The direct application is called the particular object in view. So, we can easily understand that the judgment by which the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is only the preparation, while the preparation of the place where the judgment is to convene is concerning the proceedings that pertains to the living. Daniel has no more vision when the judgment that pertains to the living are already in progress. The only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is while the preparations were being made. According to the statement in track number 15 on page 13. Therefore, the book of Daniel has an important rule concerning the judgment that pertains to the living, while the judgment or the judgment that pertains to the living are being prepared. That preparation was shown by God to Daniel. And I would like to read track number 15 again on page 15, page 14, track number 15, page 14. To repeat, Daniel saw only a part of the preparations. Of what? The judgment that pertains to the living. The only portion that was given by God to Daniel concerning the judgment that pertains to the living is only the preparations, but not the entire preparations. Because the statement says, to repeat, Daniel saw only a part of the preparations, only a part, not the entire preparations, only a part. Whereas John saw the opening of the judgment and the entire proceedings thereafter. But in page 13, it says, from start to finish. The whole proceedings of the judgment pertaining to the living, John the Beloved had been able to see from start to finish. And this is our main subject. To portray the entire proceedings of the judgment that pertains to the living from the time when such judicial proceedings are being prepared to the time when it will be started and to the time when it will be finished. Remember, the actual occurrences was still future in the time of John the Beloved. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us that in 2TG 44, on page 31, saying, and though John wrote them, he is the one who wrote the entire book of Revelation. It says here, and though John wrote them, he himself could not before time explain them. The statement, could not before time explain them, meaning understood. Because you cannot explain something by which you do not understand. And though John wrote them, he himself could not before time explain them. What? Explained what? The entire judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. Although all the necessary information was already recorded in the book of Revelation, still he could not explain them. The writer himself could not explain it. Then it says, then how can we do such before time and without the inspiration of the same Spirit who dictated them? Now, we already explained yesterday that there are two sealed books in the heavenly sanctuary. The book of the Son of the living God and the book of God the Father. What is the focal point of that two books? The plan of redemption. In that book was laid down the plan of redemption. The book of the Son of the living God is called the Lamb's Book of Life, sealed with 7 seals. The book in the hand of God the Father is called the Book of Life with the 7 seals. And we will show to you, brothers and sisters, that the mind of Jesus Christ is also the mind of God the Father. And these two books are in perfect agreement, absolute harmony. We already read yesterday that according to 2TG number 12, page 30 and 31, and track number 15, page 9 and 10, that the 7th seal contain 15 chapters long, beginning on chapter 8 up to chapter 22. That last 15 chapters in the book of Revelation is the description under the 7th seal. And do not forget the statement in 2SR 202. The 7th seal, or the 7th sealing period being the last, must concern the living. So the statement in 2TG number 12, page 30, saying that the revelation therefore is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living is even more particularly pointing directly to the last 15 chapters in the book of Revelation, because that is the chapters that belongs to the 7th seal. So whatever understanding that was given by God to all of them who died prior to the commencement of the judgment that pertains to the living, it is not the complete and the full understanding concerning the book of Revelation. If the book of Revelation is fully understood during the judgment of the dead, then for what for such promise saying that the book of Revelation is to be more fully understood during the judgment of the living, if in reality it was already fully understood prior to the judgment of the living, then such promise would be meaningless, out of value. Now, we already proved with absolute facts that the judgment that pertains to the living, being inscribed in present tense, the judgment is come. Plainly pointing plainly, definitely indicating that God has no intention to reveal completely all the knowledge to be grammatically correct. And that is one of the strongest reasons why God did not reveal all the knowledge, all the understanding to Beti-Hotep, because he died in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, by which the prophet himself testified in answerer number 1 on page 95, saying that, so while it was not exactly understood beforehand what the nature of the event would be, you see, it was not yet exactly understood beforehand, meaning not until the actual judgment is come. Now, let us go back again to 2TG 12, page 29. It says, 2TG number 12, page 29. The only difference, you see, is that Daniel was shown the judgment being set up, whereas John saw it in full session. The judgment was in session since October 22, 1844. But the term full session cannot be applied in the judgment that pertains to the dead. Only in the judgment that pertains to the living, by which the term full session must be applied. Because only in that period of time that there is a proceeding in the third heaven, there is a proceeding in the second heaven, there is a proceeding on the first heaven, and there is a proceeding on the earth. Now let us go back again to the portion that was shown by God to Daniel concerning the proceedings that pertains to the living, by which the only portion that was given to Daniel is the preparations, but not the entire preparations, only a part. According to track 15, page 14. So, let us go back again to track number 15. On page let's read the statement. Track number 15 on page 19. It says, track number 15, page 17, rather. So let's read the statement. Track number 15, page 15. The student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. Although he does make mention of the judgment twice, first in verse 10 of chapter 7 and second in verse 22. Track 15, page 15. So, the voice of inspiration, brothers and sisters, plainly told us that there is only one judicial session that was shown by God to Daniel. Although he made mention of it twice. The first mention is Daniel 7 verse 10. And the second mention is Daniel 7 verse 22. Now I would like to read some passages. In 2SR page 199. 2SR page 199. So, it says, the arrangement and the scene as described by John proves that it is the judgment in session, for it is held in the Holy of Holies. So, when you can read the term judgment in session, it is held in the Holy of Holies, or in other words, most holy place. I would like to read again, brothers and sisters, the statement in track number 15. On by which the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, saying here in page 76, track 15. No, inspiration would not thus confuse its terms and still expect us to comprehend its teachings, to know how to interpret its symbols, and when to expect the actual events to take place. So that statement is plainly telling you and I that God is a God of order. He's not the author of confusion. 1 Corinthians 14, 33 and 34. That inspiration would not confuse us. Every term used by inspiration, there must be divine principle. That when you will be saying judgment in session, that proceedings occurred in the most holy place. And not in the holy place. Because the term used by inspiration, the proceedings in the holy place is judicial sitting. But the term used by inspiration, the judgment in session, that is in the Holy of Holies, according to 2SR page 199. Now, I would like to read track number 15. Track number 15 on page, let me see. On page, I think 67. Track number 15, page 67. The truth, therefore, is trouble-free. Between the judgment of the dead and the judgment of the living stands the half-hour silence. The time absorbed in bringing the first judicial session to a close and in preparing for the second session. Now, for example, here's another term that inspiration would not confuse us. The term close and the term adjourn. The term adjourn must be referring to such judicial proceedings by which it is still unfinished, but there is an important event that it needs to be adjourned first before it will be resumed. But if you will say, the judgment is closed, of course, nothing to resume. Because it is closed. So let us distinctly separate the half-hour silence by which the term used by inspiration is adjourn, and the half-hour silence by which the term used by inspiration close. And the statement in track 15, page 67, is very plain. There is a half-hour silence after the judgment of the dead is closed and before the commencement of the judgment of the living. Now, I would like to read again. Track 15, page 67. The truth, therefore, is trouble-free. Between the judgment of the dead and the judgment of the living stands the half-hour silence. So there is a dividing line between the judgment of the dead and the judgment of the living, and that is the half-hour silence. It says, the time absorbed in bringing the first judicial session to a close and in preparing for the second session. Remember, concerning the second judicial session, God showed it to Daniel. But, is it the entire? No, only a part. Let us read again. Track number 15 on page 14. It says, to repeat, Daniel saw only a part, not the entire preparations. To repeat, Daniel saw only a part of the preparations, whereas John saw the opening of the judgment and the entire proceedings thereafter. Now, I would like to show to you a simple illustration. So, for example, this is the whole preparations. The whole preparations of the judgment of the living, or the judgment that pertains to the living. Only the preparations, but only this part, part by which Daniel saw. But this second part, Daniel had no longer been able to see. So let us focus first to the part by which God gave vision to Daniel. Now, how many times Daniel mentioned the judicial session? Twice. Right? And according to track 15, page 15. What is the first mention? Daniel 7, verse 10. What is the second? Daniel 7, verse 22. Now, in what verse by which shows the preparation of the judgment that pertains to the living? Is it verse 10? Is it verse 22? I would like to repeat again, brothers and sisters. I want to make it very slow so that we could be able to understand it completely. We already read in the Shepherd's Rod that the only portion that had been given by God to Daniel concerning the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living is the preparations. Track 15, page 13. In 2 Tg 12:29, the statement, while the preparations are being set up. But it was explained in track 15:14. Even the preparations, only a part of it, not the entire preparations, have been given by God to Daniel. And since the shepherd says in track 15:15 that Daniel mentioned the judicial session twice. The first mention is Daniel 7 verse 10 and the second mention is Daniel 7 verse 22. In what mentioned thus indicates the preparation of the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living. Is it verse 10? Is it verse 22? Or is it both of them? So we need now to study closely Daniel 7 verse 10 and Daniel 7 verse 22. Now I would like to focus first to Daniel 7 verse 10. Now let us go to track number 15. Track number 15 on page 18 and page 19. So, track number 15, so page 18 and page 19. Let's read the statement. Although the proceedings of the first two sessions are somewhat different, they are in all other respects similar. So, we need now to clearly divide what is the similarity of the judgment or the judgment in session that pertains to the dead and the judgment in session that pertains to the living. What is the similarity? And also, we need to understand clearly what is the difference or what portion by which they differ. So let us read again the statement in track 15, page 18 and 19. Although the proceedings of the first two sessions, the first session that is pertains to the dead and the second session that is pertains to the living, do not forget that divine principle session is referred only to the proceedings in the most holy place. So let us read. It says, although the proceedings of the first two sessions are somewhat different, they are in all other respects similar. The third, however, is entirely unlike the first two. So the third session is completely different. And it says, the differences are seen in that before the half-hour silence occurs, there is at the throne a sea of glass like unto a crystal. Revelation 4 verse 6. So that is the difference between the judicial session that pertains to the dead and the judicial session that pertains to the living. So it says here, the difference are seen in that before the half-hour silence occurs, there is at the throne a sea of glass like unto crystal, Revelation 4 verse 6, and no one stands on it. But after the half-hour silence passes away, the scene changes. So, after the half-hour silence passes away, the scene changes. So, after the half-hour silence, there was a change. The sea of glass is mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. Revelation 15 verse 2. Then it says, in other words, at the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass. Now remember, this is called judicial sitting. Where is the sea of glass? Brothers and sisters, that is in the most holy place. In other words, at the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass, and the sea itself is like unto crystal. While at the second sitting, the sea appears like unto a fiery stream, and the saints stand on it. These three events occurred different periods of time. I would like to use 4 events. Now, from October 22, 1844. So, this is third heaven. And if we will be saying third heaven, this is most holy place. Still, October 22, 1844. This is the second heaven. And it is the holy place. And in October 22, 1844, we already explained that what had been cleansed? The sanctuary construction. And how does the sanctuary construction had been cleansed? All the 64 books transferred to the second heaven. And the only books that remain is the 65th book, which is the book of Jesus Christ, and the 66th book, which is the book of God the Father. It is Lamb's book of life, sealed with 7 seals. This is the book of life with the 7 seals. And the 65th book is also illustrating Revelation 6 verse 5. Revelation 6 verse 5. This one is representing Revelation 6 verse 6. Now, what is the illustration given in the shepherd's rod in October 22, 1844? The entire sanctuary is surrounded by the sea of glass, clear as crystal. But there is a judicial sitting on the holy place. First judicial sitting. If you will say judicial sitting, what is the proceedings? Blotting out of names. If you will be saying judicial session, what is the proceedings? Blotting out of sins. Judicial session in the most holy place, judicial sitting in the holy place. But after all the names of the wicked under the judgment that pertains to the dead had been completely blotted out. Brothers and sisters, there is a half-hour silence before the second judicial sitting will commence. And during that half-hour silence, the scene changes in the most holy place. What happened to the sea of glass? Clear as crystal. The first change is mingled with fire. Mingled with fire. So, let us enumerate one by one. Let us enumerate one by one, brothers and sisters. So, the preparation of the judicial proceedings is pointing first to the place. Now, so that you could understand the sanctuary construction. For example, this is the entire most holy place in the third heaven. Most holy place, third heaven. So, for example, this is the place by which the proceedings that pertains to the dead had been convened. So, this place is called Sea of Glass, clear as crystal. But the sea of glass, by which the description is sea of glass. The entire most holy place is sea of glass, clear as crystal. Clear as crystal. But the statement mingled with fire, that is pointing to the portion of the most holy place by which the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living will be convened. Or in other words, the proceedings that pertains to the dead is different place. The proceedings that pertains to the living is different place. So that is the difference. And what is the similarity? Both of them is in the most holy place. But not the same place in the most holy place. Now, logically, because if that is the same place, for example, this is the place, the 24 elders are sitting, and the proceedings that pertains to the dead are still unfinished. And then the preparation for the living is already commencing. It's hard to understand. Brothers and sisters, are we saying that the place by which the proceedings that pertains to the dead, while it is in progress, then how could we explain that the preparations of the judgment that pertains to the living, the place by which it will be convened, is being prepared, if that is the same place? So it must be pointing to another place. And in order for us to understand, God showed it through symbols. So the first preparation is mingled with fire. The second preparation is that it became fiery stream. So in these two preparations, brothers and sisters, in reality, Daniel saw only a part at the time when the place by which the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living to be convened is at the time when such place become fiery stream. Now, and we know that that is found in Daniel 7 verse 10. So Daniel 7 verse 10 is pointing to the time when the judicial session that pertains to the dead is about to close. Because verse 10 indicating the preparation of the judgment that pertains to the living and the judicial proceedings that pertains to the living being in preparation indicates that the judgment, the judicial session in the most holy place that pertains to the dead, it is about to close. Now, let us go back to TG. To TG number 12. On page 29. So let us read the statement. It says, the only difference you see is that Daniel was shown the judgment being set up, whereas John saw it in full session. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Revelation 14 verse 7. And I saw thrones, John declares, and judgment was given unto them. Now remember, brothers and sisters, ponder deeply Revelation 20 verse 4. Being attached to Revelation 14 verse 7. Revelation chapter 20 is a part of the seventh seal. Now I would like to read to us our page 215. It says, as the six seals have reference to 6 periods in which the saints were sealed, the seventh must also apply to a sealing period. Otherwise, it cannot be called seventh seal. So if you will be saying sealing period, that is still provisionary time. So let us distinctly separate the fulfillment of the event of the 15 chapters of the book, or the last book, or the last chapters of the book of Revelation, from chapter 8 to chapter 22, by which there are occurrences from chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, which will be fulfilled, will be understood during provisionary time. If that is the description of the seventh seal, it is illogical that it will be revealed during 1,000 years or after 1,000 years. Now, I would like to read, brothers and sisters, for example, the last chapter of the book of Revelation. Revelation 22. Revelation chapter 22, and I would like to focus to verses 18 and verse 19. So I would like to read Revelation 22. Verse 18 and verse 19. It says, "For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book, if any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book." So whatever the plague that had been written in this book, it will be added. So those persons, they will receive the plagues twice because it will be added. And then it says, verse 19, "And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city and from the things which are written in this book." Now, this is the last chapter of Revelation, Revelation chapter 22. Would you think this warning will be given during 1,000 years? This warning will be given after 1,000 years? Of course, brothers and sisters, such warning, Revelation 22 verse 18 and 19, being a part of the seventh seal, we can easily understood that that warning must be directly addressed to the period of the seventh seal. Because if that warning, although it can be applied to all generations, but we are talking about the particular object in view. The direct application of Revelation 22, verse 18 and verse 19. It must be in the period of the judgment concerning the living, because it is a part of the seventh seal. Now, I would like to read Revelation 22 verse 1. So let us read Revelation 22 verse 1. The statement given here. It says, "And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb." So the description of the river of life and the sea of glass is the same, clear as crystal. But remember, brothers and sisters, the term lamb, according to the shepherd's rod, indicates provisionary time. That is, brothers and sisters, the term lamb. Here in track number 8 and page 6. Moreover, the statement, I will show thee things which must be hereafter, places the events in the Christian period. And the statement, stood a lamb as it had been slain, bleeding in the sinner's behalf, places them in provisionary time. So the term lamb places them in provisionary time. Of course, the warning, do not add and do not subtract. It must be proclaimed while there is still chance to repent. That if you have been able to add, if you have been able to subtract, then after you heard the message, you will humble yourselves, you will repent to escape the punishment recorded in that warning. But if that warning will be given after probation closes, then such warning will be out of value. Now, since the seventh seal contained 15 chapters, beginning from chapter 8, ended on chapter 22, we need to distinctly separate all the events from chapter 8 from hereafter. So, the revelation of chapter 8 up to chapter 22 must be from the time, brothers and sisters, the commencement of the half-hour silence down to the new earth. That's what it means by the whole proceedings from start to finish. How many proceedings? Brothers and sisters, 3. There are 3 judicial sessions. There are 3 judicial settings. The third one, the judicial session, the third judicial session, and the third judicial sitting is during the 1,000 years, the millennium. As stated by the shepherd's rod. And that is the entire vision of John the Beloved in the book of Revelation. The 22 chapters. Now, I would like to go back again to Revelation 20 verse 4. What is the focal point of Revelation chapter 20? Brothers and sisters, I think one of the particular object in view concerning Revelation 20 is the bottomless pit. Why is it that Revelation 20 verse 4 is attached to Revelation 14:7? There is a close connection. Now let us read again 2TG. Number 12, page 29. 2TG number 12, page 29. It says, the revelation, moreover, in the following verses, again and again, endeavors to make us see that the event there portrayed is the judgment in session. Where is the proceedings? If we will say the judgment in session, most holy place. Let's read again, right? To SR 199, to familiarize. The arrangement and the scene as described by John proves that it is the judgment in session for, you see, for it is held in the Holy of Holies. So when it is held in the Holy of Holies, that is the judgment in session. To SR page 199. So let us go back again to 2TG number 12, page 29. And in these special episodes, hoping that we could be able to finish the entire description of the seventh seal from chapter 8 to chapter 22 before the last and the final Day of Atonement in the holy place. Before March 27, 2021. Now let us read 2TG number 12, page 29. The revelation, moreover, in the following verses, again and again, endeavors to make us see that the event there portrayed is the judgment in session. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Revelation 14, verse 7. I would like to read to you track number 3, third edition. Track number 3, third edition. Let me see if I could find a statement. Page 115. Track number 3, page 115. There is not, track number 3, page 115. There is not, moreover, either scripture or church history to show that the judgment began in or before John's time. And still further, as the first angel's message was never preached before 1844. Why? Because there was no proceeding in the most holy place before 1844, because Revelation 14:7 must be applied only the judgment in session in the most holy place. So I would like to read again 115, third edition in track number 3. There is not, moreover, either scripture or church history to show that the judgment began in or before John's time. And still further, as the first angel's message, Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, was never preached before 1844. Then when the judgment hour came, this angel's message, the message concerning the judgment, went forth. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters, on this reading. The third edition, track number 3, page 115. I think those two passages is sufficient enough, although there are many passages. But that two passages are sufficient enough to demonstrate that the term judgment in session is in the most holy place. Therefore, Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7 must be applied only to the judgment in session in the most holy place. But the direct application of Revelation 14, 6 and 7 must be during the judgment of the living. Why? Because the divine commission that was given by God to the church during the proceedings of the judgment that pertains to the dead, not to all nations, but only to many nations. But Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, that is very plain. It says, to all nations. Although we will discuss that later. Let's go back to 2 TG 12:29. So it says here, the revelation, moreover, in the following verses, again and again endeavors to make us see that the event there portrayed is the judgment in session. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Revelation 14:7. And I saw thrones, John declares, and judgment was given unto them. Revelation 20, verse 4. Who are they, the pronoun them, by which the judgment was given unto them? In Revelation 20, verse 4. I would like to read track number 9. On page 35. Let's read the statement. That no excuse be left to anyone for ignorance or error of this on this truth. So, let's read again the statement. Track number 9, page 35. Remember Revelation 20, brothers and sisters. I think there are 15 verses in that chapter. And of course, these 15 verses from Revelation chapter 20, from verse 1 to verse 15. I would like to read to you. For example, Revelation 20, verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. When would you think Revelation 20 verse 1 will be fulfilled? Is it after 1,000 years? After 1,000 years, we know the angels, Jesus Christ. Not only Jesus Christ will come to this earth, but all the angels, all the saved ones, resurrected and living saints. But this verse is very plain. Only an angel come down from heaven. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the angel mentioned here is Jesus Christ, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Now, on verse 15, it says, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Now, concerning the lake of fire, we know that there is a type and there is antitype. Let us read Revelation 19, verse 20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So, that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Who are they that will be cast alive into the lake of fire? In Revelation 19 verse 20. The beast, the false prophet, and all the sympathizers. The sympathizers of the beast, the sympathizers of the false prophet. I would like to read, although the 15 chapters in the seven seals, the seventh seal, brothers and sisters, is a very broad subject. But I would like to read two statements in the Shepherd's Rod. First in 2SR. Let's read the statement. To SR 152. The lake of fire into which the beast and the false prophet are cast cannot be at the coming of Christ in the clouds, for the wicked are not destroyed by fire at that time, but with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 8. The beast and the false prophet are cast into a lake of fire after the sixth plague and before the end of the world. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. And in the last part of the statement, it says, the example of the beast and the false prophet remember, let us distinctly separate the beast, which is pertaining to the person, and the beast which is pertaining to the system, and the false prophet which is pertaining to the person, and the false prophet which is pertaining to the system. And that is why it is pertaining to the beast, which is the person, and pertaining to the false prophet, which is the person, and to those who are a part of that system. The example of the beast and the false prophet is to show that all the wicked will be thrown alive into a lake of fire, and that is the second death. Speaking of the everlasting ruin of the devil, the word says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into a lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. Revelation 20 verse 10, that is, the beast and the false prophet do not come up in the second resurrection, exemplifying that there is no resurrection from the second death. So the term second death is not saying that you died the second time, because the fallen angels, together with Lucifer, they will only die once. But it is called second death. But there are also wicked human being, by which they will die 3 times. But at the third time that they will die, that is second death, although that is the third time that they died. So the term second death does not referring how many times you died, but the term second death is pointing to the lake of fire. Lake of fire. Now, for example, I would like to read here in 2TG. Let us read. 2TG 41. Let me see, find that statement. I think 2TG 42, 42:28. Let's read. 2TG number 42 on page 20, page 28. So it says here, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant are here mentioned. Who are they? That is Revelation 19, verse 19 to 21. So in Revelation 19, verse 19, 20, and 21, there are three things mentioned there. Beast, false prophet, and the remnant. So it says here, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant are here mentioned. Who are they? First, the beast and the false prophet, and then the remnant. Those that are left are cast into the lake of fire. So there are three that had been cast into the lake of fire, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant. Of course, the remnant mentioned there is the living wicked sympathizers of the beast and the false prophet. It says, since the beast and the prophet are special world entities, the remnant, those that are left, represents the rest of the unrepented world, sympathetic to the beast and the prophet. Now let's go back to our subject, brothers and sisters. Therefore, Revelation 20 verse 15, must be applied first to the lake of fire at the end of the sixth plague. How many days does the wicked will be on the lake of fire? The entire, the beast and the false prophet. In the flood study, brothers and sisters, let us read 2SR. $200 and I think it is revealed in the chart of Bithihotep, the flood. I will no longer read. In the chart itself. The flood. Okay, I would like to read 251. Also that the clearing of the earth from the waters is a type of the destruction of the wicked by fire, the second death, after the millennium. And the 56 days in which the earth was dried is a type of the cooling of the earth after its purification from sin and sinners. 2SR page 251. So, in the flood study, brothers and sisters, there are 164 days lake of fire. So, from the time by which the beast and the false prophet had been thrown alive in the lake of fire, they will be there 164 days. And they will die at the end of the 164 days. When was that? At the end of the 6th plague. According to the shepherd's rod. Right? In 2SR. Let us read again. 2SR page 152. The lake of fire into which the beast and the false prophet are cast cannot be at the coming of Christ in the clouds. For the wicked are not destroyed by fire at that time, but with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. The beast and the false prophet are cast into a lake of fire after the 6th plague. After the 6th plague. And how many days? 164 days in the flood study. Now let us go back to our main subject, because I'm trying to emphasize Revelation 20. Why is it that in 2TG number 12, page 29, Revelation 20 verse 4 is attached to Revelation 14:7? Now let us read Revelation 20 verse 4. Revelation chapter 20 verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they live and reign with Christ 1,000 years." Now ponder deeply Revelation 20 verse 4. Brothers and sisters, who are they? First, who are they that sat on the thrones? And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them. I would like to read first the shepherd's rod. And let us, we need to understand completely Revelation 20 verse 4. Why? Because it was attached by B.T. Hotep on Revelation 14:7. And Revelation 14:7, it cannot be applied when probationary time will close, because it says, "Fear God and give glory to Him." Would you think after probation closes, you will be preaching to the people, "Fear God and give glory to Him"? Well, there is no more chance to repent. Revelation 14 verse 6 and 7 must be applied during provisionary time. And I do fully believe that first angel's message must be proclaimed first to many nations, after it will be proclaimed to all nations. Now, for example, I would like to read again this reading. It is printed by the Bayesian movement. Track number 16. On page track number 16, on page 34. It says, this message of the everlasting gospel, where we could find the everlasting gospel, Revelation 14, verse 6. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. So let us read the statement given here. This message of the everlasting gospel, when considered with the message of Revelation chapter 10, which declares that there should be time no longer, and that in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished. Indicates that it is a divine decree that it must be finished. And then it says, is seen to be proclaimed the second time, the first time only to many nations. Who are they, the many nations? Let us read track number 5 again. Track number 5 on page 105. Track number 5, 105. The trumpet symbolism has now brought us up to the time of the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000. First fruits predicate second fruits, for it is necessarily true that there can be no first where there is no second. Wherefore, just as there is a prophetic commission for the ingathering of the first fruits from many nations, so there must be one for the ingathering of the second fruits from all nations. So Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7 must be proclaimed first to many nations. Who are they, the many nations? The first fruits, the 144,000 living saints. They need to know that the judgment for the living, brothers and sisters, is in progress. Then, it will be proclaimed to all nations, fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Ponder deeply this statement in track number 15. On page 26. Track number 15, page 26. At that time, while the cleansing is in progress, you see, brothers and sisters, what time? The cleansing in the heavenly sanctuary is still in progress. It is not yet finished. Because the statement, in progress, it is not yet finished. The church proclaims, fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Who will proclaim it? Fear God and give glory to Him. The church, it is God's church. But the shepherd's rod made it so plain in White House Recruiter, page 23. That is the 11th hour church. The one who proclaimed the judgment that pertains to the dead, the 9th hour church. But the one who will proclaim the judgment that pertains to the living, it must be the 11th hour church. It says here in White House Recruiter, page 23, now that the time has finally come for the Lord to recruit His 11th hour servants, this priceless parable is unfolded, and for the first time it is plainly seen that whereas the judgment of the dead was to be proclaimed to many nations and people, the judgment of the living is to be proclaimed to all nations and to every people on earth. Here is what inspiration itself says. Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven. White House Recruiter, page 23. Therefore, Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7. The direct application is during the 11th hour church. And the statement is very plain. Brothers and sisters, when would be Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7 will be proclaimed to all nations? Brothers and sisters, according to the shepherd's rod, when the judgment of the living in the most holy place is in session. What is the judgment of the living in the most holy place? Blotting out of sins. But when does Revelation 14, 6 and 7 will be proclaimed to many nations? During the period of the judgment of the dead. So the proclamation of Revelation 14, 6 and 7 on the earth is in the, when it is addressed to many nations. Who are they, the many nations? The first fruits. Now let us go back again to track number 9, page 35. That no excuse be left to anyone for ignorance or error on this truth. John was shown not only the great white throne on which sits the Judge eternal, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. Revelation 20, verse 11. If you will say, the revelation is not the prophecy of itself. 2SR page 221, saying, we have stated before that the book of Revelation is a revealing of prophecies and not a prophecy of itself. So Revelation 20 verse 11 is a revealing of prophecy. What prophecy? In the Old Testament, by which it says, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away. Now, let us read the Bible. Isaiah. Isaiah 34, and you can read from verse 1, verse 2, verse 3. But I would like to read verse 4. And all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be ruled together as a scroll. And all their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Now, brothers and sisters, I think every Davidian understood that Isaiah 34 verse 1 to 6 is applied to the executive judgment in the church, not in the world. But what is the illustration? The statement says, heaven shall be dissolved. That is not second visible coming of Jesus Christ. So we should not limit our understanding when you will say, and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved. Who are they, the hosts of heaven mentioned in that reading that shall be dissolved? It did not say, and all the hosts in heaven, but and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved. And the heavens shall be ruled together as a scroll. The same description in Revelation 6 verse 17. And the book of Revelation is not the prophecy of itself, but it is a revealing of the prophecies according to the shepherd's rod. Now let us read Revelation 6. It says, Revelation chapter 6, verse 13 and 14, and the stars of heaven fell upon the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. When verse 14 will be fulfilled? B.T. Hotep says, no, it cannot be in the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, because at that time, there will be no more mountain. Right? The shepherd's rod is very plain on that statement in the old symbolic code. Let's read 2 symbolic code number 10, page 8. It says, 2 symbolic code beginning from page 7. 2 symbolic code number 10, page 7 and 8. The prophecy of Isaiah 2 verse 19 to 21 must be fulfilled sometime before the coming of Christ in the clouds, for in the description of events under the seventh plague, Revelation 16 verse 17 to 21, which falls before the second coming of Christ, it is written that every island fled away and the mountains were not found. Consequently, if we place the fulfillments of Isaiah's prophecy after the 7 last plagues, we would make the Revelator contradict Isaiah. For if the mountains disappeared just before Christ's coming, how could the wicked hide themselves in them? 2 symbolic code number 10, 7 and 8. All the mountains, all of them disappeared before the visible coming of Jesus Christ. So the statement, they will cry into the mountains and into the rocks, points out the event before the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. Because at the visible coming of Jesus Christ, there will be no more mountains that would be in existence. Now, let's go back again, brothers and sisters. And track number 9, page 35. That no excuse be left to anyone for ignorance or error on this truth. So there is no excuse to anyone. It is concerning the judicial proceedings. John was shown not only the great white throne on which sits the Judge eternal, that is God the Father, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. So when God the Father will sit on the great white throne, then that event, saying that the heavens will be ruled as a scroll, will find its fulfillment. But also other thrones or seats on which evidently sit the jury. So let us distinctly separate the jury in the judgment that pertains to the living and the jury in the judgment that pertains to the dead. So, the thrones mentioned in Revelation 20 verse 4, brothers and sisters, according to the shepherd's rod, they are the jury. Now let us continue reading. And instead of only 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands, Revelation 5:11, of angels as witnesses, He's so present. He's so present on this occasion. What occasion? Revelation 5:11. What is the occasion in Revelation 5:11? God the Father is speaking. Now let us read again. 2 SR 222. In our study of the seven seals, we reserve for future explanation the following scripture. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Revelation 6 verse 6. Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. And then it says, see chapter 5 verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. There must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah himself is speaking. So what is Revelation 5:11? The special event. Remember, we read several times 2 TG 12:24. A special event on chapter 4. A special event on chapter 5. The special event on chapter 4 is the cleansing of the sanctuary construction. But at the result of that event, the books began to be unsealed. But we are now talking about the book in the right hand of God the Father. The books that had been unsealed since October 22, 1844 is the book of Jesus Christ. Why is it that the book of Jesus Christ need to be opened first before the book of in the right hand of God the Father? Because this is the mystery of God. To show to all angels, cherubims, and seraphims, and all the inhabitants of the 11 planets, and through the representatives of this earth, all of them witnessing how Jesus Christ made a plan of redemption, exactly the plan of redemption in the right hand of God the Father. That the mind of Jesus Christ and the mind of God the Father is the same. And to prove that, it was laid down through the plan of redemption. Therefore, in the judgment of the living, or in the judgment concerning the living, it is only the final confirmation to show that the book of Jesus Christ and the book of God the Father, when the book of God the Father will be begun to be opened, it perfectly corroborating to the book of Jesus Christ. And that is the mystery, because it will be read and it will be explained by the people on this earth by which they never be in heaven. Jesus Christ implanted his mind, his thought to the saints to be translated to heaven without seeing death. The same what Jesus Christ did in the days of creation, in the days of Adam. That all the animals had been named by Jesus Christ one by one in the presence of all the angels and all the inhabitants of the 11 planets. Naming them one by one, and after finishing naming them one by one, God, Jesus Christ, gave the final test. If Jesus Christ had been able to create Adam in his own image, not only the structure of Adam, but as well as the mind of Adam is the mind of Christ. Thus, when all animals pass one by one, right? Let us read again the statement. I would like to read. It says here. So, statement, it says, brothers and sisters, was not each one of these animals the same precisely before Adam saw it as afterwards? Was not its nature and were not its characteristics identical before with what they were afterward? Assuredly. But the record is not that God brought this unto Adam to have him give names unto them, as though they had no names as yet. The record is that God brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. It was a test of Adam's unity and harmony with the creation which God had formed, and not a means of getting names for the animals. That is a test. And the test, brothers and sisters, that the image of Christ is perfectly reproduced in his people in the plan of redemption, is that when that church could be able to explain the entire proceedings from start to finish, then they have the testimony of Jesus, the testimony of Jesus Christ, because the testimony of Jesus Christ is the book of Revelation by which explain the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary from start to finish. And then Jesus Christ will visit on this earth to claim them as his own, because his image is perfectly reproduced in them. That is the plan of redemption by which it must be revealed through a sinful nature, sinful flesh. Not at the time when we reach the kingdom. Because at that time, according to answerer number 3, page 90, our nature is sinless nature. But the voice of inspiration says, it is in a sinful nature, a sinful flesh, tempted and tried. And that is a mystery. Even mysterious, brothers and sisters, to the occurrence in the days of creation, when the image of Jesus Christ is fully reproduced to Adam, when God the Father and the Son says, let us make a man in our own image, by which that image does not reflecting the structure, but as well as the mind. The mind of Adam is the mind of Jesus Christ. But God implanted his mind to Adam. The miraculous thing is that still, even though the mind of Jesus Christ was implanted to Adam, still, the freedom to choose whether Adam should retain the mind of Jesus Christ forever or whether to entertain another mind. Still, Adam had freedom to choose what power he would have to rule over him. I think that is in Desire of Ages. Everyone is choose the freedom, what power he will have to rule over him. But we know the sad history. Eve permitted Satan to implant the thought and the mind of Satan in her mind. She doubted God and then obtained the thought of Satan. And it was shared to Adam. But thank God, through Jesus Christ, Apostle Paul says, let this mind be in you, the mind of Jesus Christ. Right? In Philippians chapter 2, there is a wonderful statement. Philippians chapter 2, I would like to read that statement in the Bible. Philippians chapter 2, it says here, let this mind be in you, verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. So to have the mind of Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, no, it will not be a robbery to us. If all the Bereans will say, we are the true movement, Lema's movement is a false movement, whatever they will say. The same with Satan, the same with the fallen angels. They cannot acknowledge, they could not pay homage to Jesus Christ when God the Father says, my son, whatever the decision of my son, that is my decision, because the mind of my son is also my mind. But Lucifer could not accept it, and he accused Jesus Christ. But we need to have the mind of Jesus Christ. Brothers and sisters, as long as Jesus Christ knoweth that he was recognized by his Father, it doesn't matter. It is not a robbery. It could not be taken from him. The same with us, if we are truly the special people in the last days, the 144,000 living saints, brothers and sisters, we would not spend time. Brothers and sisters, the same with these other people trying to say, we are the true movement, we are the true headquarters, and what a waste of time. That thing should be cometh from God only and from the holy angels, according to Alonzo Jones in Revelation 14 verse 12, when the prophecy will be fulfilled, the angel will say, here is the patience of the saints that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus Christ. Meaning, let us through the whole world, not we of ourselves. Let us introduce Jesus Christ. Let us let up Jesus Christ. Let us let up the present truth. And later on, when Jesus Christ will come, Jesus Christ will introduce his true movement. And Jesus Christ will deny all of them by saying, I never know you. These people boasting, that is the character of the devil. That is not the character of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ says, I came to this world to lift up the glory of my Father. And God sent the church to this world to lift up the glory of his Son. Brothers and sisters, this is the final reading, and we'll continue on our next episode and try to read again and again, brothers and sisters, the statement in Revelation 20 verse 4, together with the shepherd's rod. I would like to read 1 SR 173. It says, let's read the statement. If everything that is human would be made low and bow down, and the Lord alone exalted in that day, one can clearly see that the prophecy is to meet its fulfillment, for the Lord is exalted on earth by His church, as portrayed by the prophet Isaiah, hoping that we'll be among this church by which they exalt nothing on this earth except Jesus Christ, except the glory of the Lord, the glory of His majesty. Everything that made by hands, brothers and sisters, nothing to glory. Because God will not dwell on those things that is made by hands. Who established our headquarters? Brothers and sisters, it is high time now to find out only those things established by Jesus Christ Himself. Anything that is human, anything that had been established by human beings, it will be destroyed. We will continue this subject, brothers and sisters, hoping that the good Lord would bless us. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. Have a beautiful, wonderful evening.